Good tidings to you, dear viewer slash listener slash, I don't know, can you enjoy this format in some other way? Alright, but if you are, well, good to have you. This is Metal Albums with Birds on the Cover, the May 2025 edition. Yes, this is the show where I look at albums that came out last month, focus on new albums, sometimes, re-releases of older stuff as an excuse to listen to older albums, where there's a bird on the album cover, and we look at what kind of bird is on the album cover, what the album cover is like, and also what the music was like. Huzzah! This month was looking like it was going to be sparse, was going to be a shorter show, until it wasn't, and more and more albums popped up that got on my radar, and here we are now. And not to mention, I have not one, but two concerts to report on from this month that, I need to spare some time for as well, so I won't belabor the point any further. Let's get right into it, okay? So that we can keep things orderly. Although, I'm going to indulge really quickly and mention, just because it was pretty fun, this has nothing to do with metal music, nor has it anything to do with birds, but also this month I got to go watch snooker live. That was exciting. My mom is a big fan of snooker, and I'm quite fond of it myself, so it was a birthday present for her to go see it live, because they had a bunch of masters of the sport doing a little 2-day exhibition tournament here in Finland, and my mom's favorite guy, John Higgins, was there playing against Ali Carter, so that's the match we went to see. I won't talk too much about it again, because it's got nothing to do with anything going on here, but I'll just say it was a pretty cool experience to see that live, because so far I've only ever seen it on television. Even though this was, a smaller scale 2-day exhibition thing, and I felt like they were playing a little bit looser than the, big grand championships on television, I thought that there was some amazing snooker virtuosity on display, some really sick, shots that they took in some situations, wow, that was so cool seeing that, just seeing that in general, but also seeing live, very cool, very cool. Sadly, John Higgins did not win on that day. Ali Carter won and went on, so, we were rooting for Mr. Higgins, and unfortunately, he was doing good, but Ali Carter was just way more, pardon the pun, on the ball. But, yeah. Right, that's snooker. Let's get into the real matters here. The first concert that I went into, probably the big profile one, Ghost played a packed arena in Tampere this month. Yes, the ridiculously huge doom metal / old-timey rock sensation from Sweden, Ghost, at last. They had come back, I think, 2022 or 2023, I think, was the last time they were in Finland. I didn't see them back then. In fact, the last time I saw Ghost was in 2015 or 16. They were touring Meliora. So at that point, Square Hammer didn't exist and Mariana Cross didn't exist. So it was high time that I went to see Ghost to hear some of these new modern classics that they've banged out, Although, really, I should point out that this was a request from my niece, actually, who I seems to also be quite a huge Ghost fan. She really wanted to see them live, so she was like, "You're the only person who'll probably go with me to see it, okay? So can you please come with... Can you please come to this concert with me and my brother?" And I was like, "Yeah, okay, sure, let's do it." So I was there, the three of us, me, my niece, and my nephew, went to go watch the show. And, well, I should also really quickly preface, I've listened to their new album, Skeleta. I'm not a huge fan of this album. Now, I've enjoyed the transformation of Ghost from straightforward doom metal into, weird, 70s, 80s rock music, tribute, and funny YouTube comedian Bradley Hall basically called out that they're basically just ABBA at times, which that really made me laugh as a fan of some of their work. And then I heard Spillways, and that, yeah, like this super, it could be an ABBA song. So, but no, I like it. It's funny, like as their transformation that I've been following now. Like I've been putting up with a lot more of this like 80s journey rock, arena rock kind of vibe that they've brought, like a lot more than I would normally, I think, But I gotta say that Skeleta, I think, a step too far. I don't know. It's just it all was that kind of 80s big synth rock worship, really. And I thought that it was a little bit of a flat album. So unfortunately, that was kind of like driving my expectations down a little bit. There's some really good songs on there as well, obviously. The standouts, excuse me, are the first song, Peacefield, and then towards the end, Umbra. Those are like some really cool, like those rock out really well. So like that. Like obviously, I was happy if we could get those songs live, but I was like, I don't know about the rest of the album all that much. As it turns out, though, this concert ended up being almost a Meliora 10-year anniversary thing, because that's the album that they threw down the most songs from on this concert. So I was pretty damn jazzed, like, okay. And I think the Skeleta songs were fine live as well. They busted out the two songs I just mentioned, and they played Lacrima and Satanized. Of course they'd play Satanized. That's the big breakout single hit. I think it's the weakest of the singles, so it's like a weird pick that's what they went with as first. So, but it was fine live. You can look up what the band looks like right now from the music video to Lacrima. You can see what the current Papa Emeritus looks like and what the outfits on the Nameless Ghouls are like. I enjoyed that the Nameless Ghouls have a little bit of personalization between each other now. Even though they're supposed to just be anonymous, well, in real life, they're just like, touring musicians, contracted for these live tours. In the lore, they're just supposed to kind of be a faceless mass, but they had like a little bit of like touches on them. Like the two guitarists got to have like top hats and like dapper surcoats, so they had like a real kind of Baron Samedi kind of energy to them. But then the other members had like those nun headdresses, and some of them had like little bat wings. Some of them had like cloaks. It was kind of a fun little mix up. And the I think the new mask on Papa Emeritus looks kind of doofy. Because if you look it up, he's wearing like a skull mask thing. Like he's like an actual like half mask on top of his head, and I don't know. I just thought like it was like a bad RoboCop look. But I think the purple kind of outfits that he busts out otherwise are pretty neat. So I think it's all right. The stage was, the stage dressing was, at first I thought it was surprisingly muted given like how gigantic and how much of an experience Ghost has become. The drums were on a big stand, but there wasn't like a lot of crazy decoration otherwise. One crazy thing was a giant light set up in the shape of the Ghost logo, like dangling over the place. So it was surprisingly muted until they dropped the backdrop curtains in the middle of, I think they were playing Cerise, and they dropped those and revealed like this cathedral background with like LCD screens with crazy religious imagery and like, Gothic arches. Like, still, I'd say not the most over the top like set dressing. Like Iron Maiden had a similar setup in 2023. Which one was it when they were in Rockfest on Legacy? I think it was 2022. But it was 2022. I thought that, Iron Maiden, of course, goes way crazy. I thought Ghost was like slightly more reserved on the dressing there, but with the same gimmick though. But it was pretty nice. Unfortunately, the seat I was at, the speaker setup was blocking the like middle of the background, so I never saw what the like middle image was in the background there. Oh well. But yeah, no, the band had a lot of freaking energy. Like they were really, really, really into it. And Tobias Forge, the man behind Papa Emeritus, he just really does have like a really good command of the audience, and he's got like some really strong speeches in between his songs. So he really like had the audience going, and the show just was pretty top notch altogether. And like I said, like a pretty good representation of music. Like I loved that we went back to the Meliora time. There was one song from Opus Eponymous. It was, of course, Ritual. The first song that I first heard that I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. This band's cooking. And a couple songs from Infestissumam. But otherwise, yeah, it was Meliora carried it, and then a lot of their big hits from the later albums, which makes sense. That's like they were already blowing up at the time of Meliora, like they were headlining Tuska is when I saw them back then. But then they it went just crazy after that, like how huge profile this band is. But yeah, it was a really good selection of songs. Like from the Pinnacle to the Pit started up, and I was like, oh my god, this is awesome. Right, because I should say they started with Peacefield, which was like, yeah, cool. That is a good song from the new album. Let's go. And they played Lacrima immediately. I was like, yeah, all right. And that's the order that the songs come out in on the new album. So for a minute, I was like, oh, God, they're going to play the entire album. This is one of those concerts where they're just playing the entire album, huh? But then, immediately after that, I think it was Spirit that they busted out, and then From Pinnacle to the Pit with that sick bass intro. I was like, okay, never mind, we're cooking here. And yeah, I had a really good time once those songs started dropping. And I gotta say, I really appreciate that the Nameless Ghouls really did get to show off in this concert as well. Since it's so single person driven, this band, a little bit of a worry that it's all just salivating over Mr. Forge. But no, the Nameless Ghouls all got to also have a presence, and when it was time for them to show off, whether it was a keyboard solo or a guitar solo, or again the bassist just rocking at the start of From Pinnacle to the Pit, like they were given their due time, and they also had a fun presence. Umbra has this guitar dueling with the keyboard section. And the bassist was sitting on the steps and pointing from the guitarist to the keyboardist to be now it's your turn. Okay, now you go. All right, let's see. There was, very fun energy there. They saved the big three songs for the ending there. So after, a really solid gig, it's time for the encore, everyone's waiting, and conspicuously, at least, I would consider two, I guess this third one's also considered a big one, at least two big songs have yet to be played, so, of course, they came out and jammed, the three-hit punch of Mary on a Cross, Dance Macabre, and then Square Hammer. Freaking good. Really, really yeah, that's what you want. And certainly made me happy, again, as I mentioned, because I had never heard Mary on a Cross or Square Hammer live. So, only thing I ended up feeling was that there were barely any songs from their previous album, Impera, which I think is a really solid album. So I'm a little bit now regretting that I didn't go see Ghost a couple years ago when they opened the gig with Kaiserion, and they also played Spillways, which, but yeah, I guess more reason to go see them some other time, although I will say that getting tickets for this thing was a mega hassle, and I don't have the stomach in me to do these mega bands that are going to sold out in a minute kind of things. I don't really feel like hunting for tickets for those again in the near future, so I don't know. But if I can arrange another Ghost concert sometime, I will consider it. Okay, but I said that there was another concert that I went to only a scant few days after the Ghost concert. I went to see another band. let's say, smaller in profile than Ghost, which isn't, particularly surprising. But for me, probably a bigger deal, even though I've seen this band once before. But this was an anniversary occasion, so a huge deal. We went with my friend group to see Kiuas playing their debut album, The Spirit of Ukko, on this 20th anniversary occasion, playing the entire album. So, awesome stuff. Now, it's time for the confusingly regular disclaimer about, disclosing, personal, connections to the band thing. This is the third time I'm doing this now on the show, I think. Yeah. And this one is actually a step up from the last two, which was like, oh yeah, it turns out that I have, it turns out that, a friend of mine is related to a band member or is friends with a band member. This time I actually know one of the people. I have met the singer of Kiuas, Ilja Jalkanen, at a couple of, social events. I would not describe myself that we are close enough to be friends. I don't know if we cross that threshold, but I would certainly say that having seen him at a couple of parties and chatted up with him, we're acquaintances on some level. I have been at a Christmas party where myself and him have both been watching and riffing on Jingle on the Way. So there's something there, right? Okay, yeah. So yes, I am somewhat, connected to this band via that. So you can maybe, take that and, consider that if you feel any sort of biases in my take on this band. However, I do need to point out that just to set up my credentials here, I certainly knew Kiuas before this, running into Mr. Jalkanen at an event thing. That was one of my formative, albums when I was a young lad and, getting into music and collecting albums. I got The Spirit of Ukko back then when it was new. So I was already a fan because that's a really sick album. So it wasn't a case of, oh, okay, I met this guy and he's in a band and I got into that band. It was a case of, oh my god, that's that guy from that band I know I love. Oh my god. So, yeah, so I would have been gushing about this even if, it didn't turn out that I've also bumped into, an actual band member. Okay? Yeah. So, Kiuas was at Tavastia, and there were a couple of bands before them as a warm-up. I don't have a lot to say about the first band. It was called Kneel Before the Death. It's a metalcore band that is looking to release their debut album sometime soonish. Sorry, not metalcore. Metalcore. It's a straight-up deathcore band, and I have been on the record. I reviewed one deathcore album on the show that I don't really gel with this genre. Metalcore is fine, but for whatever reason, once you get into whatever the hell deathcore is, my interest kind of plummets. I was still pretty happy with their, performance, and, my friend group was such that I think they would be even less interested in deathcore than I am. I get the feeling. But they were all as a live thing, that was pretty interesting. So I think there's something about the genre which lends well to just having a really explosive live show that, you can at least appreciate like that. The band was pretty on point. The vocalist was having a trip. he was really, really, he was making some expressions he was having some kind of channeling some kind of religious experience at some moments as during the kind of drops in the jamming. So and the bassist was really into the music, so really appreciated that. So I guess at the live show they were fine, but yeah, The music just isn't particularly catchy in this genre in general for me. We all agreed that Final Song had some neat riffs in it, and it's called Spiral. So look up Spiral by Kneel Before the Death if you want to hear what I think is the best work of this band. But it was a live thing. It was a live warm up. It was fine. Although I'm glad I wasn't the only one who noticed it. I thought that the music mixing was bad. Like, one of my friends commented on, like, it maybe sounds better when you hear it when it's, like, properly produced. And I was like, oh, good, I wasn't just imagining things. I thought the guitar was mega buried in the rest of the instruments and the vocals and stuff. Like, I remember I took off my earplugs. Like, do I just have my earplugs on wrong? And I was like, no, I can't really make out the guitaring at all, even with the earplugs off. And, like, I heard it better during the solos. But, like, yeah, I think I would recommend to the band to maybe look at mixing the volumes a little bit better. But after that, the second warm-up, or I guess we're already kind of getting to, like, co-headline, territory here. But, the higher profile warm-up was Brumir, a band which I'm on the record as really liking for some, like, really, like, big epic hero tinged melodeath, Or as my friend described it, it sounds like Turisas with blast beats. I was like, yeah, it's an apt way to put it. Yeah. So credit to them for that one. This is crazy that I said there that was my third time seeing them, but I had to recount, and I was like, no, this is my fourth time seeing Brumir. I've been very busy with this band. Thankfully, they're a really good band, so it really isn't a problem to see them a fourth time. In fact, Brumir gets the honor of being the first band on this show which I talk about for a second time in my live concert recaps. Last year when I went to Dark River Festival, they were one of the acts there, so I was already talking about them back then. And in that sense, I don't much have to add here, I guess, unfortunately, because, like, it was a similar gig to that one, and it's good. Like, the club setting of Tavastia made it a little bit more intimate, and we were really, really up there in front, so, like, it was really cool seeing them real up front there, but it was, it was very cool. And it was interesting contrasting it to the previous act, where a little bit, I'd say, less experienced on the, live performance in terms of, like, moving around and, like, also, like, getting the audience warmed up. Like, it felt like a little bit like they were still learning that. Whereas Brumir, like, the vocalist was on point as soon as it started, like, really had the audience's attention. And, like, he just, like, was, like, having a really good, like, little stage act there every once in a while, playing around with the drums, and he just, like, he gave some really impassioned speeches between songs, and this band really knew what to do live, so it was really nice. And the songs were rocking as always. They played a set fairly close to last year. They didn't play anything. If I heard correctly, they didn't play anything from their first two albums, which is a shame. Their second album, Slayer of Gods, is really cool, but their two newer albums are also really, really tight, and I guess the only problem is that that means that there's the preponderance of some really fast songs, because both of these newer albums were very much more like super high-speed blast beating, versus there's a little bit more variety on Slayer of Gods. I haven't listened to their first album except for the standout song Ragnarok, which, again, they did not play here either. So, I'm not complaining too much. Good selection. They debuted one new song, which is going to be on an upcoming album, and it sounded really tight, too. Just hearing for it for the first time, sounds pretty good. It's going a little bit more for that cosmic sound that Wings of Fire had, versus the more sword and sorcery, like, adventure metal that was their newest album, Voices in the Sky. But it sounded pretty cool on the first listen. So be on the lookout, anybody who's a Brumir fan there. I think the next album will be cooking as hard as the last ones, based on this one song I heard. So yeah, very cool. I got to keep their set list. I was lucky enough. They were handing them out at the end, so I snagged it for myself. Pretty happy with that. Altogether happy. Yeah. Then we get to Kiuas, of course. This, in a way, it's a cornerstone of Finnish kind of power metal. I guess it counts as power metal. Hold on, let me really quickly see. I'm curious. What genre does Metal Archives list Kiuas as? It's I think because I personally feel it's a little hard to compartmentalize them. Okay, they're listed as power metal here in the Metal Archives. But I don't know, because I think Kiuas leans more to what I coined, like, I don't know, or coined, like, I referred to when I reviewed Orden Ogan on the very first episode. Like, it's this more macho power metal. I don't know, I don't know if that's the right word, because, like, I don't feel like the band members are particularly macho or, particularly, pumped up or anything, but like the vocals aren't super high power metal, and the guitar is a little bit more down tuned and like saw edged, so like but there is like some really lovely like keyboard accompaniment there, and it's not harsh enough to be like melodic death. So yeah, it's like that more like kind of pumped up power metal, if you want to call it that, I guess. So, yeah, anyway, it opened up with a really delightful, like, very kind of over-the-top video documentary about the band's journey. Like, very, like, on the nose, pumping them up as some kinds of, like, mythical figures of the metal scene coming together to create this one-of-a-kind project. It was very funny, especially when it was interspersed with, like, really early images of them. Like, when I say early, like, some of the guys from primary school, when they first met as friends and began to, like, workshop making a band, and it was kind of cute. So, after that build-up, we launched into the concert. It was really nice. It was super cool. It was an hour and a half, so by the end of it, I was starting to be quite a bit petered out, is the only sad part, but that's not the band's problem. That's me, because I'm an out-of-shape lumpus. But yeah, speaking of the concert itself, like just, yeah, they started out with a couple of songs not from the spirit of Ukko. This was a concert where they played other stuff, and they kicked off with some of their later hits. And yeah, just like Brumir, just like a really good command of the audience. Everybody was like really into it. Even the keyboardist and the drummer, who are a lot more stationary, they were like, really signaling to the audience to like get pumped up, and they were like, really feeling it. And Ilya, I mentioned, that I've met the guy, so, again, this might fall into the bias, but, like, he just has a really good, he's a very eloquent speaker, and he's got, like, a really funny sense of humor, so he can, like, he's just a really good, like, again, like, hyping up the crowd, and, like, he can play to the crowd super well. Like, he called out some international fans who had made the journey here to Finland to see the band, because like he had heard about them. There in particular, the furthest guy was from Chile, which like hats off to that guy. That's very impressive. So that man was provided a lot of love in the audience by the band. Ilya shouting him out for making the journey, and lovely little stuff like that. And the music playing was really solid. I was really excited that we got to hear the spirit of Ukko in its entirety, which again, like I said, that Ilias is a good speaker and like a really funny guy. Like he immediately like called out what I was thinking, which he mentioned that we're playing the whole album, but we're not playing it like in order from song to song, because as he put it, all the good songs are at the start, so it would be kind of lame because then we'd end up playing the shittier songs to like cap it off. Again, like just like a little bit of hyperbole for humor's sake, because there's some, that whole album's great, but it's like the standout hits definitely are closer to the start of the album. So they ended up like playing interspersed with some of their other later songs. They ended up playing the entire album. I got to hear songs which, I've seen them once before, and they didn't play obviously the whole album, so I got to fill out my Spirit of Ukko checklist. And there's some great songs that they probably won't be playing live again for a while, if ever, that I'm really happy I got to hear. Until We Reach the Shores is super good, and that's like a less less remembered song from that album, so that I was very much feeling it once that song hit. And then the really proggy stuff from the end of the album, really good stuff also to hear live. And they played Winter in June, which is the bonus track on the Japan version, which is a really fun like rally as well, so it makes sense, and very glad that they remembered to play that as well. And altogether, again, just, stellar concert. Like, no real complaints there. I guess if I want to be a mean person here, I will point out that Ilya flubbed the lyrics for their big prog song, And the North Star Cried, which he's himself called out, that he's like, oh man, I've been screwing this up every time. Let's see if I get it right this time. And then he dropped a couple of lines. So I don't feel as bad mentioning it because he himself was calling it out that it might happen, but it was fine. It went very nicely still, and that song is sick. So like the really crazy riffing there was perfectly fine to hear. You know, it made up for it very nicely. That's about it. I don't have much else there to add. Then, if you folks listening still have a chance to see Kiuas at some point, because they were on a big hiatus for a while. They weren't feeling it, and then they now, I guess, are feeling it again since they came out with an EP last year, I would recommend trying to see these guys live once they're still coming around. I don't know how long they're still playing Spirit of Ukko in its entirety. But, like, even if they're not, like, I still would recommend, because the songs they will be busting out from there are going to be great. Oh, that's right. They didn't end the concert on Across the Snows, which I think is considered kind of their best one, or it's like the fan favorite from that album. That was their second to last song. And then they had a small break for the encore, which was the title track, Spirit of Ukko. I guess, that makes sense. It's the title track of the album that they were hyping up. So, I guess in that sense, it makes, sense that that's the one that we cap it on. But it's a little weird because the song is kind of like, it's set up as an intro, because the very first lyrics are, "Greetings, we are here tonight to bring the spirit of Ukko to your hearts." So, like, I guess if you want to get pedantic, it's weird that that's the last song that they play. But, but I also thematically, again, just checks out. And it's a really good song. Like, even if Across the Snows is the best one, like, that's still very much one of those good songs from the start of the album that Mr. Jalkanen mentioned. So, all right, sure. Why the hell not? And it felt great. Cool. God damn, I knew this would take a while because I had so much to get through here, but now I'm looking at the timer and we've been talking for half an hour, so, this is going to be a giant episode then, isn't it? You can already tell from the episode length, huh? Whatever. That's my, concert reviews, so they were really good. Basically all the concerts that I saw and all the bands I saw, so I still give a thumbs up to these bands, and as I mentioned, if you have a chance, any of these bands, I think, is worth your time seeing live. So, that's done. Let's not belabor it any further. Let's get on with the show proper. Let's talk about some birds on metal albums and how those sounded/looked to us. Please enjoy. All right, this month we're going to be starting with Beware of Gods and their second album, Upon Whom the Last Light Descends to, Amnesia Island. Whoa, quite a mouthful. This is some pretty chonky 90s style sludge, grunge, doom, spooky vibes fest music. Like, whoa, it was quite a trip listening to it. The birds might be a little hard to spot on the album cover because of the, real monochrome green, washed out look, but that kind of center middle, like bottom panel that kind of shows the titular Amnesia Island. There are definitely some silhouettes of birds like circling over that island, presumably seabirds, given the nautical look, but okay, I don't know. I guess it'd be your standard flock of ravens that so often appears on these album covers, but seagulls is, I guess, a safe bet given the milieu. Yeah. So, yeah, this album cover immediately sells you on the 90s-ness of it. It has that, it has that really grimy alternative metal vibe that was very popular at that time, or at least was popular in a certain scene. I suppose, I don't know if this ever really hit the mainstream. You know, this kind of, really, really grimy, grunge-inspired music. But, yeah, it's an interesting album cover. I don't know, it doesn't hit me super hard because it's so simplistic, but I dig, again, the, kind of influences of that era. You can see the weird kind of paneling going on here, and that kind of industrial, worn-down look to the album cover. The circuit board type of patterns there at the upper left. I suppose even the this kind of washed out green color also invokes maybe the Matrix in some sense, which is that a 90s or 2000s property? I think it came out in 98, 99. So year-wise, of course, it's the 90s. 99. I have to really quickly check. But I think that's considered one of those cultural turning points where kind of the 90s as a culture ended. I don't know. I in my mind, the Matrix is still kind of the 90s 90s industrial cyberpunk kind of energy, and this has that same energy in my mind. So there you go. Sure, it's a fine album cover, but I don't know what's going on in that kind of top middle panel. The weird kind of black curvy shape. Looks like deer antlers was my first guess, and I don't think that's what it's supposed to be. So I don't know. If anyone's got ideas what that could be, feel me know. Alright, musically, I gotta say that sludge metal is not one of my favorites, so this one is I'm coming into this a little bit, biased against it, so it's a little hard for me to, maybe appreciate this album, because I've seen takes from folks in comments seem to be this was super anticipated for a lot of people. I've never heard of this band, by the way, just to point out, but seems like there's some interest for this album. But I'm gonna be a hard sell, although my bias against sludge is counterbalanced a little bit by 90s nostalgia is an easy way to bait me, to be interested, so the sound being rather authentic does kind of amuse me. But yeah, after a kind of a spoken word radio transmission-y intro that's kind of spooky, yeah, immediate oppressive vibes with this kind of weirdly discordantly good vibes piano being just slow dripping, chugging, distorted metal in the background. It's pretty, ooh. Well, it's for the genre, but it's it's from heavy stuff, real kind of downer music. And that's only a preamble for some reason, the third song on this album, the second kind of proper song, if you don't count the intro, Submerged by the Ghost of a White Whale, is this 15-minute long juggernaut that just is slow plodding and spooky, kind of oppressive vibes. It is a kind of a challenge to listen to, I have to say, as someone who isn't a huge fan of this genre. It's fascinating choice to again, that seems like the kind of song you'd put at the end of an album to have a giant song. Here it's not the start, it's not the last song, it's a one song into the album, let's do this giant song. And, it kind of maybe subverts your expectations, because immediately after that you get a little bit more pep in your step, it's a little bit more grunge than straight up sludge, and I found that a little bit more pleasing, although, grunge is also not entirely my favorite genre either, but I guess I'll take it over, really, really grimy, sludgy doom, I guess. So, there's some, a little bit more catchiness after that, it suddenly has a little bit more, speed to it, and a little bit more interesting riffing to it for a few songs. But yeah, overall, it's just a really, really, really oppressive album. So it's kind of not my speed, I have to say. It's a great time capsule example of like, oh yeah, this was a genre at one point, and it's interesting to hear the kind of like vibes of those. But I don't know if I can really listen to this album a second time. Not the entire thing, at least. I don't think it. Yeah. What can I say? Not exactly my wheelhouse, but it's kind of fascinating. So, someone else needs a time travel trip to the 90s. This might be an interesting listen. Sure, think about it. Oh, good. There's a band called Cumbeast, and their newest album has a bird on the cover, which means I get to talk about this band on the show. Wonderful. This is the 7th album from this Finnish brutal death metal outfit. It's called Fairytales of Filth. So the bird's pretty evident on this cover. It's there at the bottom left. There's a dead bird on the table next to that candle, between the candle and the book there. It's a little hard to tell what kind of bird it is, like maybe a pigeon or some kind of passerine bird, owing to the fact that it does appear to be quite dead and also big red eyes. I'm not sure why it's in that state. Is it just well decomposed? Did it have albinism, or has it been injected with that syringe full of liquid there to the right, which has modified it somehow? I don't know. But it's a dead bird. It's kind of awful to see that, but the image is supposed to be kind of awful, so it certainly adds to the ambience. Well, the image itself is interesting. I appreciate the green and purple contrasts here, classic contrasting colors, and it's well lit. I like this interesting light source from this book that appears to be spraying something on this zombie. Yeah. All right. I mean, look, it's a grody album cover, but that's again on purpose, of course, given the band's genre and lyrical themes. So I think it's an all right album cover. It's well rendered, and the color work is good, and the grody details are interesting. There's quite a bit of 80s worship here with that Batman mask and Slimer in a jar, because the band does seem to... A lot of death metal and thrash metal bands love a little bit of 80s worship. It's kind of in vogue lately, so this is also kind of leaning into that. I don't know, I think it's a bit kind of extraneous. I don't know. Could have maybe done without it, but whatever. But yeah, it's well done. What I think is funniest, by the way, is that jar of liquid next to Slimer, and it's labeled cum, but it's got that culty old-timey V there, the culty old-timey V, so it's kvum. I know it's supposed to be pronounced cum, but I'm the kind of jerk who would just pronounce it as a V whenever possible, so there you go. So yeah, it's pretty good album cover, really. Even if it this isn't even close to the nastiest album cover this band has, by the way. Hats off to them, par for the course. They're flying that. It's also not the most wholesome either. Like, they actually got a couple of this wacky, again, 80s action movie vibe album covers, which were a lot less covered in curious translucent liquid. Yeah. Okay, musically, right. So yeah, I suppose brutal death metal isn't. That's not my scene either, really. I'm a little bad at listening to just general death metal, but then brutal death metal. But there's something about the kind of frankness, the just directness of brutal death that is kind of compelling. Like I don't like. No, I can't say that I'm like disliking listening to it, at least in doses anyway, and I don't know, there's something when they really get some nice groovy and hard-hitting riffs, it's kind of nice to listen to, and I'd say this album was similar. We do of course have to first address the incredible song titling on this, which is just from a band called Cumbeast. It's par for the course once again, just like these really juvenile when you get down to it, just like goofy song titles, the kind of stuff that me and my giggling compatriots in junior high, like 12, 13-year-olds, would find really, really funny to come up with these offensive song titles, such as Commando, Captain Cock, Forest Fat Frenzy, Ghost Fuckers, or Spermafrost, which that I really like. That's really cool. Spermafrost. That sounds really cool. I'm surprised I never thought of that one myself, so that's pretty good. I suppose Captain Cock is also kind of clever in a way once you remember that there was an actual guy called Captain Cook. So we're just kind of riffing on that a little bit. So yeah, that's the song titles and lyrical themes as far as I can tell. The lyrical singing, of course, is the incredibly low and guttural growling that you expect from the genre, so I didn't make out a lot about the lyrics. But yeah, no, I gotta say that this is actually a surprisingly compelling album. There's some, when they get some catchy riffs going on, they do. They're like really aggressive. The drum and the guitar are really well in concert here. Although they have their super twangy metal trash can snare drum, which, Metallica got laughed at in Saint Anger. I think it works better in this genre, but just a word of warning, if you got Saint Anger PTSD, it might be triggered by this album. I again thought it was fun. As a single listen, it was fine. And also gotta give points, they are actually trying to diversify the genre by doing a little bit of genre crossover here. That's interesting. The titular Captain Cock, sorry, not the titular, excuse me, there's no titular song here, but the song Captain Cock that I highlighted earlier, it features the accordionist from Korpiklaani as a guest musician, and it's basically an attempt to marry brutal death with pirate metal by having a kind of sea shanty vibe to it. And the chanting of Captain Cock followed by a accordion accompaniment is really catchy. I actually really did like that song quite a bit listening to it. It really kind of stuck to my ear. Another one that that's interesting is a song called Troll Named Scroat, which leans heaviest on the fairy tale thing that the album cover and album title seem to imply, by indulging in a little bit of, a bit of symphonic metal, like choir chanting, and also a bit of kind of almost Danny Elfman-esque, kind of capricious little chimey music to kind of make it sound like a little bit like a spooky fairy tale going on. And, other just interesting, stuff like that kind of pops up every once in a while on this album to be okay, this is surprisingly diverse for, this genre, which often feels like an impenetrable wall of sound and grounding for someone not super into the scene, I don't know. I enjoyed my listening through it, and maybe you might be surprised by this as well. So if you're a little bit on the fence, I'd say try listening to this album. It might surprise you. Yeah. And if you don't mind a bunch of genital puns, it's also a requisite to listen to this album. But yeah, if that's not a hurdle for you, then go right on ahead. Next up, it's the Swiss juggernaut of folk metal and melodeath, Eluveitie, or as the band seems to want to pronounce it themselves, Eluveitie. Still not sure which one to go to. Their 8th album from 2019, Ategnatos. We get to listen to that next. Huzzah! So this is not their newest album. I talked about Eluveitie in February when I happened to see them live, and I provided a reportage on my trip to the concert, and I mentioned that their newest album, Anu, does not meet the criteria of the show because there is no bird on the cover. Too bad. It's a pretty cool album too, so still worth listening, but that's not what we're talking about today. However, I guess as part of the hype up, of the newest album, they re-released their previous album, Ategnatos. And I do believe this new release is the deluxe edition with a couple of acoustic renditions at the end there. So, that's why we're looking at it right now. Yeah, flock of birds there in the sky is the obvious bird connection, including a really big, I guess, a raven right there at the top. I'm guessing because there's a song straight up called The Raven Hill on this album, so safe bet. It's pretty, it's an evocative design, that silhouette of that raven flying there, so I think it's a pretty good album cover. And, overall it's a cool, it's a kind of enchanted landscape, as is often the vibe for these folksy albums. But there's something interesting about this one. It's the scraggly nature of it all, and the really muted color work, I guess, which does add something to it. So I do think this is a pretty cool album cover, even if it isn't doing anything particularly amazing with the album work here. So very cool, very happy with it. Now the album itself, I mean, I don't know, there's no real secrets here. This one is a real killer of an album. The Ategnatos just slaps, so this is a really good, if you only need to listen to one Eluveitie album, like this one is a really good choice out of their work. I guess Slania is the other one, the obvious one of their early work. But this one is a really wonderful, just example of this band. And speaking of, the first song, the title track Ategnatos, is just a perfect summation of the band and an incredibly hype first song for an album, with a really mystic kind of spoken word intro evoking an epic Edda of old, leading into the folks music kind of layering in on each other, the folksy instruments, like a flute serenade us into just a build-up and a build-up and a build-up that just launches into a really sawtoothy melodeath riffing with some real strong harsh vocals from Kriegel Glanzmann. It's forget the album, if you only need to listen to one song, I think the title track Ategnatos just really sums up the band and this whole album in its entirety, and it's cool. But getting past that, even if I think they kind of blow the load with the best song right away, it's still a very high quality album. There's if you go for the regular version without the bonus tracks at the end, it's 16 songs, but there is a couple of interlude songs there, so the actual quote unquote real song count ends up being a little bit more limited. And there's what Eluveitie really sticks out. Eluveitie really sticks out. It really is a fascinating fusion of folk metal with some real melodeath, strong melodeath, In Flames Gothenburg melodeath vibes. They're fused really wonderfully together. So a lot of folk bands do have a harsh sound. Some have a more melodic sound, a more subdued sound, and it's more just about those kind of old-timesy instruments and kind of folksy vibes. But there are harsher folk metal bands for sure, but I think none of those really, even if they go for a kind of a bit of a death or melodeath sound, I think none of them go for quite the same kind of modern sounding guitar work that In Flames and Gothenburg isn't exactly modern at this point, but if you catch my drift, it just kind of has a more cutting edge sound to it. There's some almost genty guitar work at times and some really distorted ones, and the vocals, some really interesting characteristic harsh sounds in there, and there's just really good variety despite that energy. Some have the more folk whimsy to it, and some slip into just straight melodeath, and then there's kind of soaring, uplifting ones, and then some really intense and angry ones. They're working some anger, and then there's just big sweeping orchestral kind of cinematic amazing vibes things mixed in there. So it's still, I'd say, very varied, even if it does really hit all the notes. I guess the one complaint I might say is that a lot of these songs, a couple at least, sound very similar to Eluveitie's big songs from the past. So songs that do seem a little bit like Enis Mona or Call of the Mountain are in here. This is one of the albums that I listen to more from Eluveitie, so for me personally, that's not a problem. Like, I'm perfectly happy listening to this one and like getting the vibe from it. But maybe if you're a long-time fan, then maybe I can see that you might be like, this one kind of spinning the same plates a little bit. But if this is the first time you're hearing about this band, again, this is a really good starting point. I'm really happy with this album. Next up, it is The Haunted, a Swedish kind of thrash, kind of death metal band coming out with their 10th album now. It's called Songs of Last Resort. This is a bit edgy, but really cool, everything going on here. I really like this. Now, I saw this album announced a while ago, and I was like, yeah, okay, well, it's not coming on this show. There's no birds there. And it was like a week before its release, I happened to like open up the blew up the full image and looked at it, and I'm like, holy crap, there's just straight up a flock of birds on this album cover. Whoopsie daisy, I do need to feature this once it releases, so here we are. The birds are over there on the bottom right. It's a flock, it's a silhouette, black cutout, so it's impossible to really say what birds those are. Couldn't give you any kind of smart guess, so I won't spend time on that. And I think the fact that I was like, oh, there's not going to be any birds on this cover, whatever, that tells you that those birds really don't add much anything to this image, and I maybe think the image would have almost been better without them. I know that this show is metal albums with birds on the cover, so I know technically we should just like celebrate every single occasion of a bird appearing on a metal album cover, but the artistic part of me thinks that this image, it's quite a minimalist image, and I think it would have been better served being even emptier. So, like, for the sake of artsiness, I would have said that excise the birds, but they didn't. So that means that while the image I think is a smidge worse than it could have been, it still means that we get to talk about the band and the album. So huzzah! And I mean, yeah, the album cover itself, if we move on past the birds, like, its minimalistness and its starkness really serves this hard-hitting band really well, and just looks really neat. Like, those color picks of, like, kind of aquamarine turquoise, let's go with that. Turquoise and, like, this, like, kind of scarlet red, and just these black silhouettes. It's all, like, really striking, and just, like, very well, like, the image is kind of, well, you might say haunting. I don't know why I get that. In general, the band logo being the dead center like that gives this, like, an energy of, like, a movie poster, more so than an album cover. But again, it just kind of, like, something about, like, how hard it punches you visually sets you up really well for listening to the album itself. And I'm gonna say it's a really goddamn good album cover. Yeah. But yeah, musically. So, no, I had not listened to this band before. I will admit that. Even though it does appear to be quite a long time and quite prolific band. So, like, this has been a gap in my culture, I suppose. This band seems to be a little hard to categorize genre-wise when you look it up on, like, Wikipedia, because it has thrash metal, melodic death, and groove metal all listed as its genres. And yeah, I think it migrates somewhere around all of those regions. Like, it's very intense for thrash metal, even, I would say. Like the vocals are really harsh to be thrash metal, but then some of the guitar playing, I think, has melody to it, but doesn't quite lead into death metal either, in just like pure, like, starkness. While this is, like, really intense music, like, there is a flair to it that leads a little bit closer to thrash, of like kind of showing off a little punk influences as well, just like kind of riffing around like crazy, like I have a really hard time explaining how thrash and death come off as different, but, like, suffice to say, like, I definitely can hear the difference if you play a pure thrash versus a pure death metal band, and I think this band does fall somewhere in between. And then there are those, like, kind of groove metal-y, like, kind of, like, really slowed down and kind of bass heavy and kind of trippy, like, kind of guitar work there at times. So yeah, it's hard to pin down. Like at first, the first couple of songs, I kept thinking of Sodom, another like particularly cranked up to be like really intense thrash metal. But then those other influences definitely pushed it towards something like Lamb of God at times. So it kind of waffled around. And I think that does work to the album's benefit. I think if it picked harder one of these two directions, I think it'd be one of those cases where I'd be like, this is a bit too samey, or this is just like, it just kind of does the same, it's really a little bit too intense for its own good without like, really like broadening its appeal. But now I think it's actually a pretty good listen despite the like kind of really hard-hitting music that it is. I think it really jumps around a little bit, and there's a nice little variety on like what you get in it, so that it's while it's certainly an angry album all throughout, it's got a nice amount of variety given the vibes that I do think elevates this album a little bit more than maybe some kind of contemporary. So I was left thinking that it was a pretty good album. I think I need to listen to this band a little bit more, and maybe this album in particular, because there's only a couple of songs really that really stuck to me. The Bleed Out was great, and Collateral Carnage was like that was the most like Quake 2 soundtracky, which just so we're clear, for me that is some of the highest praise you can give a song, is it sounds like the Quake 2 soundtrack. So there was one song on this, Collateral Carnage, which sounded like that. So yeah, I can't hate on an album that does something like that. Definitely not. No, very cool album. Good. Definitely worth giving it a spin. Alright, let's look at a bit of an older album here real quick. This is Horrenda with their second album, Díoltas. Now, full disclaimer, this band is from Ireland, so that's only my dumb guess at how the word is pronounced. If that is Irish/Gaelic/ something similar, the pronunciation could be wildly different. But that's I'm gonna have to go with that with my limited knowledge. Yeah. So this album came out all the way in 2020, so it's been out for a while, but it is getting a physical release for the first time from Fiat Productions, which I also might be pronouncing wrong. Damn, this one's tough today. Well, so, that's my excuse for looking at it today. Let's go. Okay, the bird is there on the left, quite easy to spot. Some kind of raven or crow, looking ominous there, because it's just a creepy silhouette with a little white dot for an eye. I kind of like that energy, for sure. I don't think this image really needed the bird that much, but I don't think it's as superfluous as The Haunted just a second ago that we watched, so I think it's a step above that, but, I don't think this image necessarily needed that fella. Maybe to balance the fact that, there's that tree on the right, so you kind of want something on the left as well, so, I might as well have like a little bird there as an attentive audience to this spooky lady. And the rest of the image is, pretty good. I like this design for this spooky lady, and the, dreary, painted kind of sort of oil colory vibes in the background are pretty damn cool. I like the gloomy energy of it. Interesting choice with that, geometric doohickey over the lady's head. It kind of lends this image more of a sci-fi energy than, the dark fantasy that it would otherwise be going for. And also, kind of provides the only other color outside of dreary green with that red dot, so I don't think it's necessarily terrible. Kind of a curious choice, but sure. Yeah. Maybe in Irish mythology that makes perfect sense, so, do let me know. Right, so, music then. Okay, so it's straight up pretty down to the wire black metal band. I was a little bit put off when this album started, when there's some like archive recordings playing in the background. It starts with what sounds like the reading of the Irish Constitution, I think. And then it sounds like what I really sounds like Alex Jones talking about the New World Order. And that, would in normal circumstances be quite a red flag, and I maybe would have tapped out, otherwise. Fiad Productions is very clearly not about those vibes, so the fact that they have agreed to, make the, produce the physical release of this album assuages my worries. It makes me think that it is in fact meant as some kind of ironic, critical fashion, the use of those clips, but if that wasn't there, I would have been like, nope. So well, let's go with that assumption then, that it's not Alex Jones adjacent. Actually, this music, good lord. Apart from that, once we're done with that, the music kicks in, and pretty cool. I enjoyed it quite a bit. It's it is a black metal album for sure. The first thing I need to note is that a couple times now lately, I've been complaining about the vocals being a little bad in black metal songs. Not just the acquired taste of enjoying black metal shrieks, but I've thought that they've been kind of over-mixed to sound super muddy, and just kind of haven't felt all that, very strong, those vocals. Not so here. This is intense. The shrieks in this album come out with some intensity. There is some real intent behind the scene here that's pretty impressive. And it's been mixed to be really, really clear. In fact, this whole album has quite a sharp, clear sound to it compared to the often intentional kind of warbliness of black metal. And it ends up, the other thing I'll give to the album, that ends up having a bit of a alt metal sound to it in the background. There's definitely almost groove metalish guitar squeals on occasion, and just some bass laden heavy thrumming in the midpoints of the songs, very very kind of almost little breakdowns almost. It's an interesting vibe for a black metal album that I found quite fascinating, and I think it's the song Craven Cross Horrenda. I missed which one is, but there's an instrumental track around the halfway point of the album, which also features some really cool keyboard work, along with this kind of a little bit, unique black metal sound to it. So that really was the highlight of the album. By the end of it, though, I'm still gonna have to say that I, was a little bit done with the album. Even it's not even a long album at slightly below 40 minutes, but still I was it's just a little bit too much of the same. Those intense lyrics, the intense shouting, don't get a whole lot of variety to them, and the songs by the last few salvo of songs didn't really distinguish themselves too much. Just the same kind of black metal thrumming. So I think it's worth a check out, but it's not going up there as a favorite repeat listen one. I'll pick up a couple of the songs from this album for sure, but I don't think for me personally it's going to be a long-lasting one. But something to consider. Coming up next, it's Skuggor and their third album, Where Sun Resigns. So, if you haven't been able to tell by now, this month is a bit of a variety selection in terms of genres, and there hasn't been a whole lot of atmospheric black, which we've been enjoying quite a bit, I feel like, this year, and I think in general, because I think certain genres lend to have birds better on them. So this month has been a bit of an outlier, but here we have one black metal album, at least, for this month to also sample. Well, the birds, pretty evident. There's 3, gonna make a safe guess, crows or ravens flying right there in the dead center, taking flight in this ominous valley. Standard issue of adding a little bit of life to a emotion, to a forlorn scenery, Certainly we've seen a bit of this as well, yeah. But no, I don't mean that as a complaint. I think it's a quite nice album cover. It's it's doing that black metal thing of just kind of having two tones, just like big black ink work, but it's picked this scratchy green as the other tint rather than just being black and white, so it adds a nice little natural flavor to it. Like the framing here, and it's minimalist compared to some of the like atmospheric black albums we've looked at with those like big oil paintings of like lavish scenery. This one is barren in design, being a dead forest, and also minimalist in its style by just being like this ink work. But I think it serves the music well and kind of stakes out the band's own like kind of vibes quite well. So, very good, very good. And I suppose I would describe the music similarly as being, very good. Stakes its claim very nicely. Didn't make me go nuts by the end of the album. Fairly quick clip of an album at about half an hour or so. But so not a huge commitment. I have to contest the atmospheric black claim a little bit. That's what I see on Metal Archives or on the Bandcamp mentioned that it's an ambient black or atmospheric black. I feel like this album cleaved a lot closer to classic traditional black metal than some of the other bands we've looked at that come under this genre umbrella. Certainly, the influences, I guess, are there. The first opening song has a long, extended kind of flute part or some kind of woodwind part to set that scenery, definitely build up some ambience. But then the music, I think, launches into, what do you expect from a traditional black metal, which is some very kind of distorted and you almost say hypnotic in its kind of rhythmic kind of guitaring and haunting vocals. It comes off as a three-piece band, and honestly, I look at the credits. There's only two people in this band for drums, vocals, and guitars. I can't find anything about a bass, so it's entirely possible that it is a two-piece setup, but that doesn't mean that there isn't some, keyboard or synth effects there. Yeah, or like these kind of more atmospheric instrumentations there. You will get occasionally, the synthy backgrounds, and then some like kind of chimes in there and other kind of things. But it's not as prominent as in other bands of the genre, especially something that we've looked on this channel. That Seer comes to mind or something. This one is focused much more again on that like simple, straightforward blasting black metal. And I guess I'm saying like I think anyone who is specifically atmospheric black metal or melodic black metal, I think might have to come to this album with a little bit of reservation to be aware that this one's gonna not quite go as deep into that. So you need to set some expectations, and if that's the only genre you're interested in, I think this might not be the best example of that genre. Not the best like next one to listen to. I do think the musician work here though was competent, because I did find the like kind of hypnotic vibes, the ambience I guess comes through even with this minimalist band, So I think like it'll definitely for a more broader black metal audience, I think we'll find stuff to enjoy in this album. Yeah, for myself, I actually kind of do lean towards that. Like, I would have liked it to be big, old, atmospheric. But I had a good time. And like I said, it's 30 minutes, so it was a nice, quick listen, ultimately. Alright, black metal, Next up, we got folk metal coming for you from Latvia. This is Skyforger and their 7th album, Teikas, which I checked translates to Legends. Ooh, exciting. Skyforger, I hadn't heard of this band before. My initial guess would have been that they were riffing on the Amorphis album, But no need to get angry at me, Latvian viewer. I also checked. This band is quite a bit older than the Amorphous album Skyforger, so they were way ahead of the curve on that concept when doing this old-timey folksy stuff, yeah? No worries. In fact, as I understood, speaking of Amorphous, when I looked up about this band, I get the impression that they share Skyforger shares a similar kind of cultural importance role in the Latvian music scene as Amorphous does in Finland, in terms of like representing the like folklore and national culture mythology in the metal scene, in like a really huge, being like the flagship representative of those like legends and themes in their country's metal scene. That's the impression I got. Feel free to tell me if I'm wrong. Again, hypothetical Latvian viewer. Well, the birds are pretty easy to spot here. There's a big old flock of crows in this night sky here, watching this bizarre scene unfold. I think the birds add not a lot, but like something good to this image. If they weren't in this image, I would have felt that this image is a little bit too stark. Like I would have said that, I think there should be something else still. It's a little threadbare, this image, otherwise. So yeah, I think having this ominous flock of crows here is pretty good. Yeah, I'll take it, even if they're not they're just little black silhouettes, so there's not a lot to take in on the bird front there, but sure. And otherwise, it's an interesting picture. I got no clue what is going on there. This is my poor state of knowing about Latvian mythology coming through, so I'm not sure what's even going on in this image. This spooky horned guy in the woods who's on fire, I don't know what they're about, and I don't exactly. This is a very odd design for a werewolf. In fact, I'm a little bit like, what is this? Like, okay, it's definitely a werewolf if you look at those arms that a wolf does definitely not have, but the choice is fascinating that it's got like, straight up human legs. I mean, that's what it looks like, is like those legs are sprouting off of this wolf man. So is it like mid-transformation, or is this in fact some kind of curious creature from Latvian folklore that is specifically a werewolf with human legs? Like hairless human legs. I don't know. Once again, Latvian viewer, I'm putting a lot on you today, this hypothetical Latvian viewer, but help me out here, okay? Please, I'm really, I'm genuinely curious. No, but otherwise, the image is fine. Lighting-wise, it's pretty neat. I like the barren swamp vibes, and, that pale, pallid green glow makes it look all spooky. The light reflecting off the werewolf is painted in very nicely. It's quite a good picture, it's pretty good. It's just that I'm a little bit like, what the heck is even going on here? So yeah, it was billed as a folk metal, pagan folk metal, whatever, band here. So I was a little bit taken aback by how long it took to, get to those vibes, I guess. I'll admit that I was walking in with, I suppose wrong expectations. I was expecting a certain kind of folk metal, and this one doesn't indulge in that. After the first opening song, which is an ambient opening intro thingy, the first proper song starts, and it was really close to just being a straight up black metal song. By there's this very intense strumming and really almost blast beating and just straightforward, really hammering hard. And I didn't notice folksy instruments in that first song. They didn't jump out to me. So it's not quite black metal because it's not that super discordant, and the vocals are more thrash metal, kind of shouty, growly shouty, rather than straight up black metal shrieking. So I can see that this doesn't quite count as a black metal band maybe, but it still wasn't meeting those folk metal expectations, and that kind of continued for a couple songs. It was only the fourth song, Spigana, where a flute busted in, towards the end of the song to like kind of do a little bit of a flute solo. I'm like, okay, now I'm feeling it. If there were like bagpipes, flutes, other folksy instruments before that, I apologize. I actually missed them because I was just like, okay, this is more black metal, really. And it kind of wavers. This album wavers between the, again, black metal and more thrash metal, really, by having like some really saucy, like groovy guitar riffs. And again, those vocals never get harsh enough to be black. They're more thrash. And I think ultimately there's some really good choice songs, like Maja Skuns is the 5th song, is pretty freaking neat with those thrash metal elements. It's like almost like those kind of stamina-ish, like a bit psychedelic almost, or esoteric thrash. Like okay, this is interesting. And I think the album suffers a little bit from an identity problem because of all these issues that I mentioned, and I think it's maybe a few songs too long. So, like, I think that, like, more black-leaning songs are not where this shines. I think the thrash influence is really cool, and the folksy stuff accentuates it nicely, but I think otherwise there's a little bit too much going on this album. So, there's some really good songs, again, in there that I've mentioned. A couple more. Svetbirj is a really cool song. Eluveitie was neat, and but like then I would excise a couple songs from the beginning. I would not touch the last 3 songs, which are like a really cool encapsulation of this album. The third to last song is a bagpipe interlude. The second song is a really cool face-melting thrash song, like with like some really cool bass and just like screaming guitars. Like, oh, okay, this is interesting. And then the third song is actually what I was... third of these final 3, which means the final song, gets confusing, is actually what I was expecting from this album. It's like a real cool, like, kind of slower paced but epic, heroic folk ballad thing. You know, they start off with those folk instruments, and the guitar work now has the kind of jauntiness that folk bands have. So... it's kind of cool the way this album wraps up, and I think that really makes me really happy with this album ultimately. But yeah, you gotta like be prepared for a lot, and be prepared for maybe not to gel perfectly if you want to listen to this whole album. I wouldn't discourage you. It's an interesting take, and certainly an alternate take in the folk genre. So I think it's worth a listen. So check it out. Sleep Token! They came out with an album with a bird on the cover, and that means I get to talk about them on this show. Oh boy, I really didn't expect this to happen, but here we are. Exciting. So I guess, of course, I gotta preface this first, since this might be the highest profile band this month. Sleep Token. This is my first time actually listening to this band, I have to admit. But I'm of course aware of their reputation, which is basically that these are a really popular current metal band, and this seems to be kind of the modern sound band that basically everybody who liked metal from 5 years and before, like, you know, this is the modern sound that like older fogies do not like. That is generalizing, of course. I'm sure there's plenty of older fogies who do like this, but the general vibe I read online is like, this one's not the one. This one's not the one that's any old-timer's favorite. And I gotta say, like, my curiosity was just like, what the heck does it even sound like? Because, like, again, this is supposed to be the next level of that compared to, like, how much, new metal was disliked, and, and then later metalcore was disliked, and then the next level of metalcore, which was the kind of even more electronic and hip-hop sounding one. And then, then there's this. So, like, what is this all about? But before we, of course, talk about the music, let's talk about the bird on the album cover. It's an interesting one, a very rare sighting, a black flamingo. We've had one flamingo on the show before, and this one is a black one on top, a unusual sight. I had to Google that to make sure, and apparently... yes, those are an actual thing. This has been a couple of sightings in recent history of a black flamingo. It's some kind of genetic thing, like some gene is the gene that makes a flamingo pink is off or something, and they end up being black colored. So interesting. And kind of cool. Yeah, again, just the novelty of it's great, and just a nice little picture of a flamingo. The picture in general, like, very interesting. Of course, the color choices are the real big thing here. Of like, wow, this is fascinating because the very interesting like shades of magenta and lavender here, and then kind of juxtaposed with kind of like really like coal black, like a really like chalky matte black. So it just looks very fascinating, and it is really cool the more you stare at it, this image here. So I do dig it. I think there's some kind of visual metaphor going on here, but I'm not big-brained enough to tell you what it is. Because it is interesting that the flamingo, being a black flamingo, really blends into that like dark rock there in the background. Like, I admit that the first time this album was announced, I was looking at upcoming albums. I quickly glanced at this and was like, well, that's not going to be featured on the show. It took me a while to had to open up the bigger image and to be like, oh, hey, there's a flamingo there. All right, huh. But the thing is that even if that was a normal colored pink flamingo, it would still blend in with the background really well, since it matches the magenta-y colors on the vegetation on the wall. So yeah, something interesting going on with the fact that it's an unusual flamingo, but still blends in with its surroundings, if that makes sense. Kind of, Again, I'm not smart enough to tell you what that implies, but here we are. So yeah, on to the music then. And first song immediately, I'm like, okay, this is why this is not a favorite of more traditional-minded metal folks, because it's a very brave choice in mixing up the genres here. It begins as a straight-up R&B song, and that's what if you look up Sleep Token and you try to figure out how people categorize this band, it seems to be like R&B cross, like very modern, like gentish alt metal. That's the basic descriptor of it, and you really need to listen to a lot of R&B in that first song. It's like almost 8 minutes long, that song, and it takes over 3 minutes before suddenly massive wall of like really distorted kind of genty metal, like just a wall of like metal music, like, oh my god. Before that, like, yeah, there's like really ethereal and dreamy kind of pop R&B vibe that's big on the like emotions, the like big feels, and really like heartfelt wailing lyrics from the main guy, Mr. Vessel. And then you get the metal all of a sudden, and like, whoa, okay, huh. So yeah, of course, like, you have to commit to a genre very far away from normal metal circles for a good while before suddenly metal in there. So I can see that this can be a hard listen if you're just signing up to listen to metal music or anything adjacent. Like, it's gonna be like, whoa, okay, all right. And I'm gonna have to admit, I'm trying to be positive here, because I don't want to be too like narrow in my genre interest. So I want to be giving an open chance to like this kind of fascinating song, fascinating project. But I do have to admit that ultimately I didn't really enjoy the album that much once I'd listened, to over half of it. And definitely it comes down to, R&B and that kind of like emotional pop kind of not being my area, just admittedly. I do feel like the instrumentation, the musicianship on display is very high caliber. Like the artists are very good, and the vocal range of Mr. Vessel is very, very good. Like, able to do those R&B kind of emotional ones, and there's some rap sections, and then there are the harsh vocals when we once again dip into metal. So lots to like appreciate on a technical level here. But. Yeah, I thought that ultimately it seemed like every song structure was what I just described there about the first song. It's very like chillax, like easy listening opening. Sometimes it's like a kind of a music box chimes. Sometimes it's a piano. Usually it's like those kind of like lo-fi synths and what you think of R&B, covered with those like, you know, like really heartfelt wailing lyrics. Sometimes they like do that thing that, you know, the intentional auto-tune, over-tuning to like make it sound really warbly, which is again par for the course. And then like, you know, about halfway through the song, you'll get like a gut punch of like pretty intense metal. And yeah, it's like it sometimes it's like just a little bit of a snippet, and sometimes it's at least lasts for the rest of the song, so it's a big closer. But it's like, yeah, unfortunately, not being super versed in the R&B side, I can't really appreciate all that music. It ends up sounding, a lot of it, rather samey to me, which is a complaint I've leveled at some just straight up metal albums in the past, and unfortunately this one's no different. Like it was hard for me to get any standouts there, and I, you know, again, wasn't exactly in my wheelhouse, so I wasn't super enjoying it. I guess the song Getseman towards the end might be my favorite, because the metal section that comes in on that is kind of like a really late 90s, like kind of distorted like alt-rock, alt-metal sound versus the more, you know, progressive, genty sound earlier. So that kind of stood out to me, and that was kind of interesting. So I enjoyed that the most. But yeah, I hate to admit it, but not exactly. I'm not like, okay, I get it. This is why this... Or, like, I get it. Like, I get what this band's deal is, and it's a really cool, bold choice, but, like, it didn't win me over, unfortunately, with its eclecticness, its quirkiness. I don't know, like, because I haven't listened to their earlier work, so I'm thinking that the problem here is that this is a bad entry-level album. Like, it's a bad first touch if you're coming in as a metal person. I think this might be a bad, like, first touch on the band. Like, maybe they have, like, more even like metal music representation versus the R&B side on their earlier albums. Possibly. I can't comment. I don't know. Like it's kind of like, you know, like maybe if I had been listening to this band earlier, like this would feel like a natural evolution, and I'd be way more down with this way more poppy sound here. You know, it's kind of like, you know, basic comparison, but we talked about Ghost and Skeletor. If that was my first time listening to Ghost, I would probably be like, no, not for me, this band. No, this is bizarre. Whereas, you know, now I'm just like, well, it's got good songs on it, not as good as some of their earlier work, but I see what they're doing here, you know? I get something comparable here. So, yeah, not really easy to recommend for the big metalheads out there, but if you're intrigued by this genre mix-up, hey, you know, give it a shot. Alright, next up then, we have the crazy Swedish prog metal band Vildhjarta and their third album, Der Skogen sjunger under evighetens granar. Whoa, that's a lot of Swedish. Nice. Alright, this is a very busy album cover, as you can tell, and when one of these comes up on my radar, I sit down and spend a extra amount of time trying to work out, is there in fact a bird hidden somewhere in this image? And this one, for a moment, really looked like there isn't a bird anywhere to be found in this kooky cacophony. But I think I found a couple, and you are welcome to dispute my claim, but I'm feeling pretty strong about this, strong enough to feature this album on the show. So, it's... The obvious one is, the most obvious one to me is way down there on the bottom left, that tree halfway hidden by the outer frame of the image. There's a hole in the tree, and there's what I'm pretty sure is an owl looking out across at the viewer. Like that little shape there, and the fact that it's hidden inside a tree hole like that, I'm fairly certain that is supposed to be an owl. And once we've worked that out, if you look further up that same tree, you can actually see 3 more sleeping owls, you know, there in that other hole there, you know. If those were the only ones, I maybe wouldn't have been confident, but that bottom one is such an owl-looking one, you know. We'll go with that. other that the third thing that I'm not very confident, but I'm only listing for completion's sake, the top middle of the framing this image, there's like strange figures there, and there's a sleeping mouse kind of to the right of the middle, and next to it is kind of a bird-shaped thing, but it's also got hands that's holding on to something, so I can't tell. It could be just a guy in a coat that's got weird spindly legs, but it's got a weirdly bird-like shape to it. But yeah, that one is definitely a corner case that would not qualify for this show, but we can go with those couple of owls in that tree, for sure. Well, then, yeah, do they add anything to it? Well, in so much as, a crazy Where's Waldo image like this needs a lot of elements in it, then sure, they're a welcome addition to the scenery. And I mean, the scenery is fantastic and fascinating, both fat words you could use. It's got like some kind of like Midsummer Night's Dream energy to it is what I get, like this like riot of forest creatures and other strange beings just like all crammed in. The art style is really fascinating with this like, very flat colors, no shading, but very kind of expressive, kind of imaginative. And what I find interesting is that row of like closed eye people on the top of the image. Those characters in particular really have the energy of like some kind of like Southeast Asian art to me, or maybe like some kind of Indian art, or then more like Indonesian art, in that region. I feel like characters are drawn sometimes in local art like that, but like this isn't really subject-wise. This doesn't really land anywhere in that region. It just seems to be more of a coincidence, or then some kind of weird meshing. But like I said, Midsummer Night's Dream, and this definitely has a more kind of European fantasy energy to it. I mean, there's a little gnome on the left on the like border there, the frame there. So the little gnome hat on. So but yeah, wacky, very, very, very crazy, which fits the very, very crazy music here. So Vildhjarta, I saw mentioned that this is, sort of in the vein of Meshuggah, I guess. I see people say, but like even more mixed up to its own like super crunchy like genty music. Like it's progressive metal, but like definitely way deep in gent. The first song kicks off with like what could be like one of them down-tuned guitars on a Mick Gordon soundtrack. Like, okay, like just one big hit and then this like brooding pregnant pause, like, oh my god. And it just launches. The first song's just an instrumental intro, but it already launches into some crazy like time signatures, some weird like down-tuned like almost bass-like guitaring, but then also goes to some weird like pinches and squealing guitars. It's crazy. And then second song, the lyrics break in. It's some real angry music. Like, yeah, you see a progressive metal, but this is one of those albums which really shows you that progressive metal is really hard to categorize, since it's so sprawling and expressive. Like, I'm not sure Dream Theater fans necessarily lap 100% with Vildhjarta fans based on what I heard here. But it's interesting. It's really enchanting, and it's got an ethereal quality to it, much like, again, the album art. It's a very slow plodding album. Like, it's not like progressive and like let's sometimes just like jam out and be crazy. Like, everything is like this slow like march forward of like, you could almost say uncomfortable music in terms of like how it jumps around with the bizarre signatures and just like real angry lyrics. But it's interesting, absolutely. I made the Mick Gordon comparison, and like Vildhjarta seems to be, based on this album that I've heard now, my first time listening to the band, seems to be very hard to categorize. Another example, we've had a few, I feel like, this month. Where, like, yes, I can point to, like, Meshuggah or Mick Gordon, but, like, they're really still, like, kind of living in their own space, and, like, just, you know, you can see where they're getting influences, but they're, like, not playing entirely by the same script. So it ends up being pretty wacky. I was a little bit tapped out by the end, being a progressive album. This thing goes on for almost an hour, and I can't really fault it for being samey, I guess, because, like, it just, like, so much unpredictable weird stuff happens in the songs. Like, sometimes we'll just bust into, like, a quiet moment and, like, some, like, acoustic guitaring, but then, you know, the squealing returns, you know. But something about just how, like, it's so, like, constant, that same, like, mega slow BPM rate, you know, makes it a little bit exhausting to listen to for an entire hour. So it's cool musicianship. This band is probably nuts to see live, so I definitely recommend that. Harder to say if I want to listen to this album much more, or just pick up the couple of, like, interesting songs and call it a day. I don't know. Maybe if you really need really crazy genty prog in your life, I think these guys are serving up some of the, you know, forefront of that. So, you know, give it a consider. Alright, let's wrap this month up with some doom metal from Sweden. This is Witchcraft, coming in with their, let me count those, 7th album, Idag. Wow, 1-2 punch of Sweden here at the ending, huh? Very funny. I haven't heard of this band before either, but also seems to be a well-liked representative of the doom metal genre by the impressions online, and let's get into it. The bird is really tiny in this image. There is a tiny little passerine bird sitting on the finger of this androgynous knight here in the middle. So yeah, you might need to squint if you're looking at the image on YouTube, but it's there. And I gotta say, this might be the case where the bird is the smallest it's been on the cover versus the biggest importance that it still carries in the image, that you know, in terms of the albums that we've featured on the show, because I think it really does add a lot to the image that this tiny bird is there hanging out on this nice finger. Without it, they'd just be a kind of weird looking knight with a kind of a doofy expression on their horse, but it just really accentuates the kind of whimsy of this image by having them being, you know, close to nature and carrying this little bird that they're interacting with. So yeah, I think it's hugely important that this bird shows up in this image, even if the bird itself is incredibly tiny on the picture. Otherwise, fascinating image. The like color work is really lovingly done. These like blue shadows and soft glow yellow of the sun somewhere to the right where we can't see it, and those bizarre like little bell flower shapes and plants on the ground, like really haunting looking. And overall the design's just like really interesting. Like, look at that beautiful mane on that horse, like it's so wacky. And there's something about, there's like a weird stiffness to this image, which is kind of interesting. Like, that knight's stance on the horse is like really odd. Like, I'm kind of blanking on what you look like when you're on a horse, admittedly, but like, it looks like they're just kind of standing there really stiff on the horse's back, and the horse itself looks super, like, you know, stiff there, and the sword on the knight's belt is like super, like, you know, vertical there, just pointing straight down, you know, like it's like there's a very palpable, like, kind of like, well, I can keep saying stiffness, but that's the energy I get from this image, with, I suppose, the kind of crooning expression on the knight and leaning their head just kind of a little bit breaks that. So it's a kind of a haunting image in a way. Like not like it gives me bad vibes, but like something about it's like it's like a little off-putting, and it's it's a really cool album cover. I do like it quite a bit. Alright, so musically, this band gets titled as a it is doom metal, and it shows up on Metal Archives. It also gets mentioned as an occult rock band on Wikipedia. So that's definitely the energy that I got out of this. Like, this definitely felt like really old and fuzzy, kind of esoteric feeling Black Sabbath. Like, that's the kind of, like, the first couple songs, that's the emotions I got out of it. With some really, like, you know, and also, like, yeah, the guitar, like, riffing is, like, some really weird places that the sounds go, and, like, the, like, is some really trippy, like, work at times. It does meander into, like, something that's more, just kind of more simple classic 70s rock kind of feelings, of, like, a little bit more simple stylings, I guess, you know, and it's quite a pleasant listen, this whole album. Like at times you'll be like, again, kind of feeling off kilter the same way that this image, this album art did, like a little bit like weird, like meandering guitar work, and then at times, you know, it'll dip into some simpler, you know, simpler kind of hard rock doom metal kind of jamming. So pretty interesting. The vocals were amusing to me. The guy, there's basically, you know, the brains behind this band, Magnus Pelander, provides the vocals, and he sounds really, really Swedish, is the only way I can put it. Like, the first half of the album is songs in Swedish, and like, I'm Finnish, so I can dunk a little bit on the Swedes. Okay, it's fine. And I'm not even saying it's like a bad thing. It's just like, wow, okay, because like he sings from like a really high place, but like not like wailing power metal-y, more like this like kind of like crooning, lamenting kind of vibe, but from like pretty high. And his Swedish accent, I mean, he's singing in Swedish, obviously, but like it's got that like really like proper Swedish energy to it. It's quite interesting. Like, I looked up a recent photo of Magnus Pelander while I was looking up, and he's got the same kind of haircut that this knight on the image has. And I have to say that the vocals really do sound like what if this knight could sing. You know, like, I think it would sound a lot like what is going on this album. So yeah, I guess I'm saying that this album cover also really gels well with the music, because like the vibes and the vocals and everything seem to really match. So good job on that. The latter half of the album like actually then switches into English, and yeah, it does not sound like the Swedish chef. Like, he can sing very fine in English. It sounds like I think that's why I felt like it changed into more standard doom metal there, because the English singing came off a little bit more straightforward like that. And yeah, you know, I can't like really highlight a single song that really jumped out, except for that really impressive opening song that went a lot of places. It's also the longest song on the album at 8 minutes long. But I thought it was an interesting listen, so if you need that kind of fuzzy, esoteric doominess, I think this is a pretty good album to listen to. Certainly, I might consider like giving it a second spin at some point to see if like it lands even better on a second go. It's quite interesting. Alright, and that was it for May when it comes to metal albums with birds on the cover. Oh boy, that really did, like I said at the start, that turned out to be a huge episode. Adding on my final outro ramblings here, this might add up to be our longest episode. At least it's pretty much on par with the previous longest episode. So, yeah, but there was a lot to say. I had quite a bit to report on with regards to the concerts I went to in May. And, you know, more and more albums, like, dropped into my radar as this month went on. So the episode just kept growing, kinda, you know. But I think it was pretty good, though. It was worth it. This was a really interesting month in terms of the variety of genres, right? Like, we went all over the place, and there were only like a couple of similar ones. I'd say Horrenda and Skuggor both were like black metal bands. They sort of cleaved close, but I think even then, like, you know, if you're big into the metal scene, the granularity is evident, and like they come off as different. So this was really interesting that we had such a broad spectrum of genres, like brutal death and genty prog metal and doom metal and sleep token, whatever that is, whatever you count that as. And it was really neat. Speaking of Sleep Token, they have now actually played their single Caramel on the radio, which is crazy to me that we are, you know, at that point where Sleep Token's popular enough to hit the radio channels that I listen to. Radio channels which normally play some really stodgy, either 20-year-old metal, or 20-year-old rock and metal, or then bands very much aping 20-year-old or older 20 to 40-year-old metal acts. So Sleep Token getting in there and getting not as negative as a reception as I thought. Very crazy. But I listened to it again, and I there's something really catchy about their music, so I do maybe need to amend my review a little bit. Like, it definitely is music that grows on you, having listened to it on the radio a couple times now. So yeah. What was, more uniform about the music this month was that there were a lot of Swedish bands. I know that metal music in general is concentrated here in the Nordics, but we got 3 heavyweights that were all from Sweden this month, so funny how that went. And I'm going to have to admit right now that they're going to sweep the prizes when I now talk about my favorites this month. So let's get on to it, shall we? My favorite album cover, it pains me to say this, but I'm going to have to give it to The Haunted. And it pains me to say this because it really runs counter to the metal albums with birds theme here, because I said that the Haunted album cover, the birds were a really, really superfluous element, and honestly the image might work better without them on it. But and you may recall that last month I did not give the prize to Elven King's really impressive album cover because the bird element was so minuscule in that I felt a little bit like meh. But I don't know what to say. Like, the Haunted album cover is insanely striking. I keep looking through like what we had this month, and like that one just jumps out to my eyes. That silhouette of the missile and the red trail against the turquoisey sky, and those huge block letters. It just is like very, very, very vivid. Like, if I was at the record store looking at the shelf of new releases, that one would absolutely jump out to my eyes. Some of the other ones this month are maybe more impressive on an artistic level, if you want to somehow say that, like stuff like Sleep Token, Vildhjarta, Witchcraft, those I would say would be a strong top 3 otherwise. But if I think about the aspect of I think those would kind of blend into the shelf more. Like, they wouldn't jump out to my eyeballs as hard as the Haunted jumps out. Like, it is effective in that, so I gotta give the prize to it, even if the bird element was a bit disappointing there. Yeah, but sometimes the show is like that. Now, the best album choice is actually a little bit tougher. Technically, the best album, of course, was Eluveitie with their seriously cool album Ategnatos, but this one is something I want to stick to. I do want to give the best album reward, if at all possible, to a recent release rather than one of these re-releases. I definitely like the opportunity to bring up older albums and highlight them, give them a chance, present them to you folks, but I'd like to focus at this point to be on the newer music. And in that sense, this month is a little bit like last month, where I was like, nothing really jumped out. Now, this month's quality, I would say, was higher than April's. I think all of these bands were pretty dang neat. and they all kind of surprised me in some ways, and they all had some high-quality songs mixed in. But again, not counting Eluveitie, nothing like jumped out as like, this is so awesome, this album. All of them were in the, this is a really nice listen category. So it is pretty hard for me to like pin down now which one I would elevate as my favorite. You, of course, at home are welcome to make your own pick, as always. But if I had to, I think Witchcraft left the most lasting effect on me. It's interesting. It was such fascinating esoteric doom metal, and it just had kind of a unique sound to it, even in that genre, that if I had to be like, well, which one of these albums would I now spin up next to have another listen to? I think Witchcraft gets that prize pretty handily compared to the competition. So I'm going to say that, the kooky, extra Swedish doom metal this month was the best offering, and I am going to support that band then. But again, as always, you are welcome to have a different opinion on this one, certainly. And I hope you consider supporting the band that you thought was the best, or even the second best, if there were lots of ones in running. If you'd like to, I have tried to put links in the comments, in the description of this video for where you can go look up these fine bands' music. So please do consider that. Well, that's all for this month. Thank you so much. Next month, well, I don't want to make any promises. It might be a little bit lighter on albums, what I'm looking at, so we might actually get a shorter episode on that front. But in June, I am going to a festival, possibly my only music festival trip this year, mayhaps. So I'm probably going to have another big, chunky live music report at the start of the episode. So, it's still going to be a big one, I think. I think we're going to have stuff to talk about in June. So, in the interim, I hope everyone has a lovely start to their summer. Or if you are on the southern hemisphere, I hope you have a nice, pleasant winter kick in right about now, too, So everyone stay safe, listen to some cool metal music, and I'll catch you all later on in the summer /winter /whatever at the end of June. Bye-bye!